So by way of summary, El Nino, La Nina is probably the most widely understood and appreciated short-term cycle, and certainly its effects on crop yields have been the subject of publications for a fair bit of time now. I don't think the effect of Pacific decadal oscillation is well appreciated. It's well understood in the literature, but it's not well appreciated out in the community. And certainly, I think it's a very important one. And certainly, I get most of my best signals out of the PDO early, whereas the SOI tends to play a greater role as we get closer and closer to sowing. Southern annular mode looks to be pretty important for breaks. Certainly April-May rainfall expectations here. And the SAM has a cycle. Indian Ocean dipole, maybe it certainly accentuates the El Nino, La Nina effect. So last year we had a La Nina, plus we had Indian Ocean dipole negative quite solidly so in September, so it tends to accentuate that La Nina effect. And I'm finding it very difficult to say one is really independent of the other, because after all, they both, when they're in their favourable part of the cycle, they're both pointing to warm water to the north of Australia. I think the effect of these indicators on wheat price movements in history looks to be a fertile area of research, and I think they've been surprisingly good. Some of the models that I've come up with, certainly better than what I'm getting out of seasonal forecasting. And it's understandable that we go from La Nina years into El Nino into La Nina and vice versa, that one would expect to see some effect on wheat pricing. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Would anyone like to ask her any questions? Here we go. Chris.
Yeah, Chris, I'm interested in your graph about the significance of warming in the phase of the PDO. It's a nice correlation, but is there a cause and effect in that? And can you draw from data from elsewhere for some things like, sample size? You've got two periods of correlation, which the sample size of two makes me scared. So I just wondered what more you've got behind that could fill out that picture.
Yep. I think I agree with you. Sample size of 2 is pretty minimal. But the other thing which is quite clear in the literature is when you're getting El Nino years, you tend to have higher global temperatures. So we know that there's more El Nino years in the PDO positive phase, so it's understandable that you're going to see more warm years in that period of time than when you're in the other part of the cycle. But that's probably the only rationale I can give to it.
Peter, have you got any thoughts of what could be happening in the northern hemisphere coming to the end of their summer?
I find this hard enough to do, just trying to work out what's happening here, Peter, without looking at the northern hemisphere. I suppose one of the concerns I have is, when you the indicators are suggesting price is going to stay about where it is at the moment all the way through to harvest. And then you look at a lot of the information that's coming out of the northern hemisphere, which is suggesting their season's not travelling quite so well. You do wonder whether you've got it right. But I think the situation in the northern hemisphere has certainly eased in the last month or so. They've been getting a bit of rain, at least in some of the areas. So yeah, it'll be a fertile area of research, but I'm inclined just to go to the nub of the matter and see if I can predict wheat yields in the northern hemisphere rather than worry about rainfall in the northern hemisphere. Because its temperature is also important, and I think indicators like SOI probably give you a better handle on temperature than they do on rainfall in some respects.